Hi there, it's Russell. Welcome to the Reading Fabricator. And today, instead of doing book reviews, I'm going to talk about the topic of intimidation. Rather, books that intimidate you, that you fear of, books that you think you're not ready for, even though you own them. And I've got plenty of books just sitting there where I just haven't touched them just for various reasons. Usually just either you don't have the time for them because they're too long, or based on a reputation that that book has, of which some of these books that I'm going to share with you today certainly have. So without ado, let's get into it. Book number one is Ratners Star by Don DeLillo. Now, usually when people talk about books that they're scared to read when it comes to DeLillo, they will always say, most of the time, they'll say Underworld. And that's always because of length. Underworld is his longest book by quite a large margin. In fact, this might be his second longest book, and I think it's just shy of about 500 pages. But the reason I picked this one is because I have read parts of Underworld and there's nothing hard about it. It flows quite easily. Once you get into a certain rhythm, you can get through the book. The reason I picked this one is based on what other people have said about it. I think on Wikipedia, the book was described as famously impenetrable. Now, the first half is this brazen piece of comedy, and then the second half, it spirals down a rabbit hole. People have compared it to like Alice in Wonderland, basically how it goes down this rabbit hole into absolute weirdness where you don't even know what's going on. So apparently people have said the idea is to just go with it, just read it, try not to understand everything, and you'll get through it. I have read the first 20 pages of this, and so far I do like it, and I do have an absolute habit of reading pages and then putting them down. I've read quite a bit of DeLillo, so his work does not scare me. Most of the work that I have read of his is post Mao 2, and that includes Mao 2. I haven't really read anything prior to that except for the short story collections that he's released, or rather just short stories, because I think he only has one short story collection, that Angel Esmeralda, and that came out in the 2000s. And I've always been mixed on him, but when he's good, he's untouchable. I do plan on reading this because it absolutely sounds fascinating. You've got this character, Billy Twiglet, who's a genius adolescent and wins the Nobel Prize, and he's a young kid, and he gets brought to this place in the middle of nowhere to try and decipher this alien code that came from a distant star or distant planet. So that just hooked me immediately. So the idea of a book about mathematics and science produced by DeLillo, that's a win-win-win. So I really look forward to reading that. But nonetheless, it's Ratners Star, famously impenetrable, also one of his longer books. And given the writing style that he has, because I know his writing style prior to Underworld is quite different to some of the stuff he's produced post Underworld, where it's a bit more minimalist. So yeah, Ratners Star. The next one is one of the big boys I'm going to show you, and that is Europe Central by William T. Vollmann. William T. Vollmann is someone I've only just become aware of as of about a year and a half ago, and there's a very certain community out there who really push his work on other people who really admire him. He's very much a cult author. He does not have a lot of readers. I mean, a lot of his Goodreads stuff is like under 5,000, so he's very, very underread, but there are a select few booktubers who really, really push his work on others, who really consider him an absolute master of the craft, specifically for his, I think it's called 7 Dream series. But this is his work of fiction. It won the National Book Award, I believe, for Best Fiction. And from what I read, it sounds fascinating. It sounds good. The problem is I just didn't understand any of it. And it's got this massive appendix at the back which details all these stuff, but I feel I need to get more into the historical context of the whole thing before I want to give this one a read. So yeah, this one, it really intimidated me from the get-go. I mean, I really had to push myself to try and get through those first 70 pages. And I could have read the whole thing. I really could have, but I just feel that it's a bit like Ulysses. I tried to read Ulysses a couple of months ago, and I got about 100 pages into that, but I realized that I just do not understand most of the references most of it is flying over my head. So yeah, this Europe Central is one of those books that intimidates me, but it's only because I just don't understand a lot of it. And my plan is to just get more into the history of the time before I give this one another go. That way I can appreciate it more. So that is Europe Central, William T. Vollmann. The next one is J.R. William Gaddis. No, I'm not picking the recognitions because the recognitions is readable. I did get partway through that one there, but unfortunately I had to put it down because I didn't have the time. And the time frame it would have took me to read that book, it would have been like 5 months, and I would have forgotten half of it anyway. So yeah, but it can be read. This one here scares me because it's all dialogue. And William Gaddis is not for the average reader. He's his own style. A lot of people say that his debut, The Recognitions, is the greatest debut novel of all time from any author, and that's even comparing him to other authors such as like Thomas Pynchon. You know, it was one of those books where it got released, got absolutely trashed, and has now found sort of built a reputation over time until now it's considered one of the greatest books of the 20th century. Rightly so, based on what I read. It's a wonderful piece of work. And I've not touched JR, even though JR was the first book of his that I bought. The moment I saw that these were going to get re-released, reprinted, I mean, I pre-ordered them straight away. So I do intend on getting to this very soon. And from what I heard, it's one of the funniest books you'll ever read. Apparently, it's absolutely great. I hear that, yes, it's a bit, to get into it, it takes a while, but once you go into the real things, into the flow, once you understand the dialogue of certain main characters and are able to pinpoint who's who and who's talking, it gets a lot easier from there. But as it stands, this still intimidates me. Every time I see it on the bookshelf, I sort of just go, whoa, do I really want to read it, you know? But I do want to read it. I just need to get myself into it and actually read it. But JR is unfortunately one of the ones that intimidates me at the most. The next one is William H. Gass's The Tunnel. And this is because of certain YouTube videos out there that have described it, that have talked about it. It just sounds like a very maximalist, difficult piece of fiction to get through. Apparently, some people who have gotten through it said that while it is sometimes painful to get through, you can get through it. But unfortunately, it's one of those ones where people are still thinking about it for a long time afterwards, where to the point where, you know, it's ruined their reading experiences, reading certain other books because they're reading that book, but they're also still thinking about The Tunnel. So The Tunnel seems like one of those ones where you need to dedicate yourself to it, and you need to dedicate yourself to thinking about it and processing it over a long period of time. I unfortunately don't really have the time for that, but there will be a period where I think I will get to this, and I do want to get to it because the premise sounds absolutely fascinating. And the fact that it was his first release in many, many years, you know, he went a long time without publishing a book, so it's been described as a very disturbing and complex, but also beautiful piece of work. So don't let that put you off, but unfortunately it's putting me off. But yeah, The Tunnel, William H. Gass. The next one is my most beautiful hardcover book that I own, and that is Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy. An absolutely beautiful hardcover book. Cost me an absolute fortune, but I had to get it. And I've had this book for about 3 years now. And I keep meaning to read The Inferno. Look, almost all the pages are filled with these beautiful illustrations. Absolutely wonderful. It's gold-tinted pages as well. So it's a real beautiful, beautiful collection. Beautiful. Really, really well put together. Apparently the translation's one of the better ones out there as well. So yeah, this one intimidates me because, again, from a reference standpoint, but also I'm not that well versed in poetry, so I still need to get to rhythm with that. I have read some poetry, particularly Mexico City Blues by Jack Kerouac, and I think the other one is Ariel by Sylvia Plath, but I mean, that's nothing compared to this, I guess. I mean, they're both classics in their own right, but this is one of those ones that's hold up as one of the greatest works of published art in history. You know, people all over talk about this. There are many, many YouTube videos out there of people discussing his work, you know, discussing Inferno in particular compared to the other two. Tom L.A. Books is probably the person who knows the most about this. I mean, he's published all these videos about it, so do check him out. But yeah, this one scares me quite a lot. So The Divine Comedy. And not all these books are long. It's not because of the length type thing, but there's quite a few short ones. I've got 4 short ones I'm going to discuss with you. The next one is a piece of philosophical fiction, and that is Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. Any work of philosophy scares me because I don't like the idea of being I don't know if manipulator is the right word, but having someone throw their thoughts at you and trying to get you to follow it. But this one here seems different from everything else. But he's always, this author has always scared me with regards to his work. And I do have like 4 books by him, so I don't know why I keep buying books by him. I keep thinking that I'll buy it and I'll find a way to get into his work and read the other ones. This was the first one I bought, and I read like 10 pages, and then I went out and bought The Birth of Tragedy and Beyond Good and Evil. I think I have another one out there somewhere. But it's I don't know. He's a very subversive thinker, and I think you have to be in a certain frame of mind to read his stuff. Yeah, this one's a hard one to talk about, but I do consider it a bit of an intimidation read. It's a lot of people describe it as brazen, and the ideas behind it are very high tier. But I can't really say that much more about it because I haven't really read much of this writer, this philosopher, basically. So that's Zarathustra. The next one is William Faulkner. I know a lot of people out there are going to say he's not hard to read, but for me he is, and that's purely because of his writing style. I just can't find an entry point into his work. I tried reading The Sound and the Fury a few years back, and I just couldn't get into it. There was just something about it, which is a shame because it's part of that whole Southern Gothic genre and Southern Gothic style of writing, the way he writes that deals with the South a lot. But Absalom is apparently one of his better works, so I picked that one up as another entry point. But every time I think about reading this one, I just think about my experience reading The Sound and the Fury, and it just throws me off completely. So William Faulkner, yeah, if there's any thoughts out there on what a good entry point into his work is, let me know. A lot of people say As I Lay Dying is a good way to get into his work, but as it stands, I just can't find a spot to get into him. So yeah, that's a sad one to show, but unfortunately it's true. The next one's from an author I do love, and that is Vladimir Nabokov's Pale Fire. Now, I've read Penin, Laughter in the Dark, Despair, and probably my personal favourite, The Invitation to a Beheading, which at one point in time was in my top 5 favourite reads of all time. A lot of it has to do with the ending of that book, an absolutely brilliant ending, a very, very fantastic way of describing the death process from the execution. And that's not a spoiler because the very first line of the book is that Cincinnatus has been sentenced to death and will be executed. So, the book is rather about the journey instead of the destination. But the destination and the way it proceeds, the way he dies and then just rises and walks down the steps from where he's being executed, past all the figures. It's just haunting, an absolutely haunting book. Very well done. Absolutely brilliant. One of his best early works. Probably better than Penin. I know a lot of people love Penin. But Pale Fire scares me because of the way it's written, its structure. It's got, a commentary. It's got the poem. And then it's got the... I forgot if it's called a prologue or if it's a foreword, and how it's all interconnected, and then it's got an index at the back. And apparently there's multiple ways of reading this book. And I got about halfway through this the first time around, but I read it from front to back. I didn't actually go back and forth between certain sections, which apparently is the way you should have read it. So I kind of stuffed it up, and because I stuffed it up, I just threw it aside and thought, well, fuck it, I'm just not going to read it then. But a lot of people are talking about this being his best work, better than Lolita, better than Ada or Ardor. So I feel obligated to read this thing. And it's not a long book, so it can be done in a short period of time. And he is one of the masters of the sentence structure. I mean, his sentences are sublime. He's well versed with words. So yeah, this intimidates me purely because I've tried reading it before and I fucked it up. But I really hope I get to it one day because he is a fantastic writer, Pale Fire. The next one, it intimidates me, but for a whole different reason entirely. And it's going to be an oddball choice, but hear me out. So this one here is The Orchard Keeper by Cormac McCarthy. Now, I consider McCarthy to be the greatest living American author. He's phenomenal. And he has different styles to his work. I mean, you look at his early work, which is sort of a Southern Gothic style with a bit of a Faulknerism type aspect to it and maybe a bit of Flannery O'Connor. And then it moves into a Western genre or maybe even anti-Western genre. And then lately it transitioned into the post-apocalyptic section. But you could also put No Country for Old Men in that style in terms of how it's written, its writing structure. So his writing has sort of progressed or say evolved from earlier on in his life, although I still think the peaks are Suttree and Blood Meridian. Those two are they're in my favorite reading experiences of all time. But the reason I include The Orchard Keeper is because I read his second book, Outer Dark, and I was supremely disappointed in it. Now, I still liked it, but I just found it so much worse than everything else he's written. And although I also like Child of God, I still don't consider it in high regard with regards when compared to No Country, Blood Meridian, Suttree, All the Pretty Horses, the first third of The Crossing, and even The Road. So my intimidation is purely the fact that I think this will probably be his worst book that I've read, and for that reason I don't want to read it because I don't want to end on a low point, at least until the new books come out, and who knows if they're going to be great or bad. I don't know. I can't say for sure. They'll probably be fantastic. But I just don't want to read this because I don't want to be disappointed based on how I feel about his other works. And maybe that's just, maybe people out there will say that, well, no, The Orchard Keeper is better than Outer Dark. But I can't really hold it against him because a lot of authors, you know, they're only just starting out. So their best work is usually when they've published previous works, with the exception of maybe Thomas Pynchon with V and obviously William Gaddis with The Recognitions. But I'm rereading Suttree at the moment, and it's like being, as I said in the previous video, it's like being introduced to an old friend. You know, I've read 80 pages of it, and it's already my favorite read of the year, even though I've already read it previously. So he's still my favorite living author. I'm just scared to read this one because I don't think it will be as good as his best work. So that's why it intimidates me. So yeah, for a different reason, but yeah, Orchard Keeper. And the last one, the big boy, the biggest book I own, Jerusalem by Alan Moore. This intimidates me not because of its style, even though it's probably verbose as fuck, but it's because of the length. I mean, how am I going to find time to read this beast? And there are going to be people out there yelling at me saying, no, you can do it in like a month if you wanted to. But, you know, at the moment, a lot of the books I've been reading are between 200 and 500 pages. And this is 1,200. Maybe if I read like 5 pages a day over the course of a year, that could work. Yeah, I could probably do that. And maybe I will do that because I really want to read Alan Moore's Jerusalem. The one that I really want to read, though, is, I think it's called Light of the Fire, or yeah, something along those lines. Very hard book to track down. In fact, you have to order it off Amazon, and there's like a month wait for it. And sometimes it's a bit expensive as well. But even just looking at this, I mean, it looks like the absolute peak of maximalism. So, yeah, I do want to get to this one. In fact, this one actually intimidates me the least because, yeah, as I said before, it's only the length that scares me. The content, who knows? I might like it, yeah. But that's Alan Moore's Jerusalem. So those are 10 books that intimidate me for different reasons. And all of them I will attempt at reattempt at some point in my life. Just probably not at the moment because I've got quite a lot going on. But there are some authors that I thought about putting on this list. Thomas Pynchon was one of them for A Gangster Day, but I thought about it and I was like, well, no, because he's actually not that hard of an author to read. Once you get into his flow of writing, he's quite easy to go through. The only hard part is being able to, you know, just follow his thinking process pretty much, especially in Gravity's Rainbow. But from other books of his that I've read, like Vineland, Crying Lot 49, Inherent Vice, and even his slow learner short stories, you know, they've been pretty easygoing. You just have to get on the same wavelength with him. Nonetheless, those are 10 books that intimidate me. If you can think of any reason why I shouldn't be intimidated by them, then by all means, comment below, like, subscribe, and thanks very much. See you next time. Bye.